There you go. Thank you again, Dr. Monica Torres, for joining in this conversation of what we title Faculty and Leadership Insight into the Faculty Role in Student Success. Today, I have Dr. Monica Torres with us to share some of her expert knowledge and her background and experience in the faculty role in student success. Dr. Monica Torres is the president of DACC, Doña Ana Community College. So thank you again for joining in this conversation.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks for coming. And the question that I'm posing for all of the panelists or the interviewees is that as we move back into the fall semester, last year has been a very different, unusual year than past, when talking about the pandemic, talking about the social unrest, and just the political climate that we are in. And we're moving back into the fall, and some campuses are coming back to face-to-face, depending on how that look, whether it's a gradual transition or just a solid movement forward. In your opinion, what do you see as the faculty role in student success as we start transitioning back a little bit more into the face-to-face or classes in the fall?
Great, thank you. I want to start with the context you set, because I think it's so important. We are not the same people we were 15 months ago, right? We've had an experience pretty much unlike any other, right, in our own histories, personal and professional, perhaps. And so a couple things strike me as really important. One is I'm asking us to think, and the conversations that we're having on campus is, how do we take what we've learned in the last year and craft the post-COVID college into something that benefits from those things, right? So we know that a lot of students gained access to our instruction and services because we had so much online. We also know that there are other students who really need an in-person environment, or at least parts of an in-person environment to succeed. And so we're trying to figure out, the conversation on our campuses is, how do we use what we learned to craft an environment that helps students from both those populations, students who experience success maybe more one way, maybe more the other way. So that's kind of the predominant thing that we're thinking. Of course, one of the other things that we're concerned about is, it's clear that COVID, and certainly the social unrest, it's clear to see what sort of disparities exist, and how some populations in our country are suffering in a variety of ways, right? And so how do we think? We all think that education makes a difference, or we wouldn't be here. And so how, again, can we use the work that we do to minimize those disparities and make sure that people have opportunities? So I wanted to talk just about that context, because I think what you pointed out was critical for us as a launching point into this next period of time. When I think about the faculty role, I think about those people in my lives, in some cases formal educators, in other cases informal educators, right? who could say one thing, who said one thing, and prompted me in a new direction, or prompted me to advance kind of what I was doing. And so that's how I think about the faculty role, is that I know from my experience as a student and my experience as an educator, that we know, and the literature, right? The scholarship says this. Mm-hmm. Faculty are some of the most critical people that our students are going to have exposure to and a relationship with. And that they really, I had an undergraduate faculty member who prompted me to graduate school with one question: have you thought of graduate school? Right. And that simple question, and this was a woman I had for probably 4 or 5 classes as an undergrad. But that simple question at the end of my experience with her prompted me in a new direction. So I just have no doubt that faculty play one of the most critical roles in student success, right? And when I think about that, in a variety of ways. One is the interactions, as I've pointed out, the way that they work with students, the way they talk with students, the way they inspire students. Then I think about it in other ways too, how they set up the curriculum, how they introduce students, right, to their fields of study, because there are ways that they can introduce students to the field of study that really inspire students, or create an environment where students can learn and develop as emerging professionals, perhaps in their field. And so it's about curriculum, it's about pedagogy, what kind of teaching strategies do people use? And it's also, how do we help students find the resources they need, right? In the classroom, and you know this from being in the classroom, it's like there are things, when I'm in the classroom, there are things I can do, right? There are things I am. There are ways that I connect with students. But students obviously need faculty members, right? That presence in the classroom, and they need other resources, right? And other connections. So I think the kind of the third role that we have is how do we help students find the resources they need? How do we connect? And sometimes it's a resource in student affairs. Sometimes it's a resource amongst their network of professionals, right? And so how do we do that? So I think about things like curriculum, pedagogy, resources, and then I would say the overarching what they provide is just the way they work with human beings, the human beings who show up to their classes, the kind of relationships they build with students. So I just don't have any doubt that the faculty are some of the most critical people in our institutions relative to student success, right? They can do a lot to prompt students towards success in an individual class, in a major, or in a profession.
Now, is there something, and kind of the final question, is there something that you think we should be doing differently in these upcoming semester that maybe changed a little bit from over the last year? That's something we need to be paying a little bit more attention to, just because we're coming back and everybody has changed a little bit. Is there anything that you think as faculty we should be doing a little bit differently or looking at paying closer attention to?
I think one of the things that we learned, and we learned it because of the technology we're using in Zoom, right? I mean, there are times when we might have a background, right? Like you have, we might have people are looking into our homes, or we might have our screen off for a variety of reasons. But what that's made us aware of is we're not just working with students, we're working with human beings in a particular context or multiple contexts, right? Every student has their own context. And so part of it, I think, is I think we're having to come to terms, and I don't think just with students, I think with employees, right? When I think about institutional, with our colleagues, is that this idea that we have full lives. We have lives that are complicated. We have lives that are busy. We have families, pets, all those things we've seen in the last year. I think is a good reminder for all of us, whether we're in the classroom or whether we're in an administrative office, to think, how does the work we do, how does the work our students do fit into the whole? I think that's a healthy thing for us to remember, because I think a lot of times it's really easy, at least, when I think about my own teaching experience or my own studenting experience, it's easy to go into this classroom and say, it's this.
Right.
But the reality, there's a hole there, right? And I think we've gotten a glimpse into the whole, right? The whole, our wholeness, right? The robustness that's our lives. I think we've gotten that glimpse, Patrick. And I know that's not a very specific, like, what do I do with that on Monday morning, right? Or what do I do with that in my graduate seminar?
Right.
But I do think that that thinking about the wholeness, right, the whole human being, actually is healthy. I think it's a healthy thing, but I also think that we may find some surprising advantages out of that. I was talking to somebody who teaches at UTRGV, and he really thinks about how do I make what I teach not just sensitive to, but part of the community that they inhabit, that students inhabit. But his part of his solution was, how do I inhabit their community, right? And so I think that wholeness. I can say too that I think from an administrative perspective, I think that one of the things we really need to be thinking about on the administrative side, I know we're talking about the faculty side, is that how do we support faculty? What are the resources faculty need to live kind of in this post-COVID, what we hope eventually will be post-COVID, this changing COVID landscape? What are the things that faculty need in terms of support, in terms of teaching, in terms of research, and the world of the kind of sets of things that they do. What are the things we need to provide institutionally?
No, and I think that was great that as you said, one of the key pieces is that I think a lot of us with the technology and the Zoom, we've gotten a peek into the whole student, that oftentimes, we just see the student as coming to campus and taking the classes. But now I think, as you said, we see the whole person. We see them as a human being that have families, that have challenges. I know a little bit from my students, oftentimes it was that big debate on whether they should turn on the camera or not turn on the camera. But a lot of the students, made the comment, to some of the faculty that I don't want you to see my house. Like sometimes, they see people with these beautiful houses, the beautiful backgrounds and all those different things. And they were like, that's not my reality. So I don't want to turn on my camera, and I feel bashful turning on my camera for you to see all these people, these things that are going on. And that impacts the learning experience, as you said before. So I think technology is a key piece that will help us at least start reaching more students, understanding them as a whole person. And then, as you mentioned before, understanding that the faculty need those resources, those tools, that training to be able to provide that necessary support, not only to themselves, but to their students as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But I thank you so much for that. But it's interesting that you mentioned about the pets. Someone said, I think over this pandemic, pets have gotten the more airtime than anybody.
Exactly right.
It will pop up on the screens in a minute. And at first, people would try to hide them, but now they just embrace the experience and will put them in their lap. So
exactly. You can see when my pets and dog come in and out of the door, you can see the door open a little and close.
Right, exactly. And like I said, initially when we first started with Zoom, people would try to hide those different things. Now everybody's like, look, this is my life.
Exactly. Here it is.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Torres, for participating in this. I was happy that you decided to do this, because again, I'm trying to kind of get those people who I think, really can carry their voice and talk to other faculty and leaders about the reality of everyone's role in student success. And I'm happy that you did this.
Right. Thank you. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.